Pakistani police have arrested 3 men over the abduction of the US journalist Daniel Pearl. They're all said to be members of a banned militant group. Police say they found the computer which the 3 used to send emails showing Mr. Pearl in chains and with a gun to his head. It's more than 2 weeks since Daniel Pearl was kidnapped and his whereabouts are still unknown.
A 20-year-old man has been remanded in custody, charged with the murder of Kevin Jackson. The father of 2 was attacked as he chased suspected car thieves outside his home in Halifax last December.
Kevin Jackson died just a few hundred yards from his home. He chased after 2 men he thought were tampering with a car outside his house. The 31-year-old father of 2 boys was stabbed repeatedly in the head. His wife Julie made an emotional appeal for help in tracing her husband's killers. And West Yorkshire Police took the unusual step of releasing photographs of 2 Asian men they wanted to interview. 19-year-old Ranzaib Akhtar was arrested at a house in Bradford last month. Then yesterday, 20-year-old Rais Khan gave himself up to detectives. Rais Khan was before the Calderdale magistrates for just 5 minutes. He was charged with the murder of Kevin Jackson and with conspiring to steal a motor car. He was remanded in custody until Monday. 2 other men also face conspiracy charges over the attempt to steal the Toyota car which belonged to Kevin Jackson's father-in-law. West Yorkshire Police described the attack on Kevin Jackson so close to his home as sickening and praised the public response to their appeals for information leading to the suspects. John Thorne, BBC News, Halifax.
Union leaders are holding talks to discuss their next move in the long-running dispute with South West Trains. A series of 24-hour stoppages by the RMT has already brought chaos to commuter services, with 2 more strikes planned for Monday and Wednesday. South West Trains said talks yesterday were good-natured, raising hopes of a breakthrough in the dispute over pay and disciplinary procedures.
2 mobile phone networks have vowed to pressure to introduce new technology which enables stolen handsets to be cut off. Cellnet and Vodafone had originally declined to use the system, but changed their minds after the Home Office urged them to help reduce the growing number of street robberies and thefts involving mobiles. Orange, One2One and Virgin already use the technology, which allows phones to be immobilized when customers pass on the identity number of their handset.
The British banking industry has announced it's to change the way we use our credit and debit cards. Instead of signing them, we'll key in a PIN number instead. The change is being introduced in a bid to halve fraud and is already in use in much of the continent. Our Europe correspondent, Jonty Bloom, has been out shopping with his plastic to see exactly how it works.
Friday afternoon in Belgium, and in the supermarkets of Brussels, people are stocking up for the weekend. Charge, debit and credit cards are all accepted at this supermarket, but many cards aren't even signed by their owners, and signatures aren't necessary when settling your bill. Instead, when it's time to pay, customers key in a 4-digit PIN number instead. The system has been in use for years here and has cut fraud dramatically. When first introduced, crime fell by up to 80% and customers feel safer.
And they're more effective, aren't they? You can use them wherever. I can use my PIN number all over the place, all over the world.
I think they're more safe than the Visa card, where you don't have to put in PIN codes. I think, yeah, it's safer.
Introducing a similar system in Britain would cost up to £1 billion, but fraud costs almost half that amount every single year, though even this new system won't totally solve the problem. Cards like this one, which take a PIN number rather than a signature, are just the latest line of defence against the fraudsters. There's no reason why we can relax and let down our guard, because credit card fraud is just so profitable, it's never going to totally disappear. Jonty Bloom, BBC News, Brussels.
The headlines now at just about 5:15. The Damilola murder trial. Here's how a key witness giggled and sang during a police interview.
Keith Vaz faces a common suspension for breaching the MP's code of conduct.
And Diane Blood, the woman who gave birth to her dead husband's baby, is pregnant again.
Well, you're watching BBC News 24. Still to come on the programme, the police chief counting the cost of spending a penny in Lithuania.
Time to get some sports headlines now. Here's Adnan. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Liz, and good afternoon to you at home. Great Britain have taken the lead in their Davis Cup tie against Sweden after Tim Henman beat Jonas Bjorkman in the opening singles rubber. Henman won it in 4 sets, but it wasn't all plain sailing for the British number one. He lost the third and then had to fight back well in the fourth. On court now are Greg Rosetsky and Thomas Enqvist. Jimmy White is through to the semi-finals of the Benson & Hedges Masters at Wembley. He beat the world champion Ronnie O'Sullivan by 6 frames to 5. And sent his many admirers into raptures. And David Ginola has moved on a free transfer from Aston Villa to Everton. The Frenchman will stay at Goodison Park until the end of the season, no doubt hoping to send their fans into raptures. The sport in detail coming up in half an hour. See you then.
Thank you very much. See you then. Now, Tony Blair is in Ghana on the second day of his tour to West Africa. He's addressed the country's parliament and argued that international aid to Africa should be seen as an investment. Well, our chief political correspondent, Nick Robinson, is following the Prime Minister's tour. He joins me via the video phone from Ghana. Nick, interesting that choice of words to describe it as an investment. Is that largely for the domestic audience, that particular phraseology?
Well, his whole message here is about partnership, that the rich world shouldn't be about giving handouts to the poor. It should be about a hand up. In other words, helping African countries to help themselves. And you may hear behind me African villagers. That's because Tony Blair has just visited this village to illustrate what he means. That they want to be able to sell their products, not to be given cash in aid programs alone. Take this village. They grow the key ingredient of chocolate cocoa. The value of that product hasn't increased for 3 decades. And if they then say, well, let's turn it into chocolate bars, sell it to you and me, Matthew, on the streets of the West, the EU then charges very high tariffs, making it impossible for them to compete with chocolate bars that ironically are actually produced in Europe. So Tony Blair's message here was the West needs to actually live up to its language on free trade. It needs to allow these people to compete, to make their chocolate, to live without handouts. That is the way to have a proper partnership for Africa, not to whinge on about aid.
Now, away from African politics, MMR still dominating. More hints from Tony Blair on the website that Leo has actually had the jab. Are we getting to a stage where it's getting silly, where we're constantly hearing these hints but not saying directly? You and I may understand what he's saying, but perhaps the wider public still thinks he's not saying it directly.
Satellite viewers in the UK can have their say. This crucial decision now facing the whole...
T-A-U-M-I-R and H. Your time starts now.
Daniel, you love her? Yeah.